I want to begin by talking about a recent commentary you wrote for The Economist, a very thoughtful piece, I must say. In that piece, you argued that Ukraine can be basically another Afghanistan of the 1980s. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Well, I think the war right now is in a stalemate because apparently with the overwhelming forces of Russia, it can prevail over Ukraine in Donbass region. But because of the endless military support by the West to Ukraine, so therefore Russia cannot possibly hope for garrisoning the whole region, even if it can be over. So how long this war will last, nobody knows. So presumably it will just become a re-emergence of the Afghan scenario in which the Western alliance led by the United States and enters weapons to Mujahideen, which eventually bogged down and exhausted the invading Soviet troops. So I'm afraid this might happen again in Ukraine.
Senior Colonel Zhou, we know that Afghanistan was described as the quagmire of great empires. To what extent do you think Ukraine can be another Afghanistan when it comes to dragging down great empires, great powers?
Well, I don't think there is a kind of direct relevance between the two, because Afghan's case is proven by history. But in Ukraine, I believe, first of all, Russia is a nuclear weapon state. So would Russia allow this kind of a slow bleeding of the South, endlessly in Ukraine soil? I doubt about it. So right now, the whole world is afraid that Russia might resort to one or two tactical nuclear weapons. But even that could be the case. I doubt whether it will really use against Ukrainians, which was described by Russia as their own precedent. So probably Russia might use one or two against the NATO countries. Because of geographical proximity, I don't believe they will use it against the Ukraine, apart from the reason that they were considered to be of one people. But I do not believe the prospect is very much in the foreseeable future. But this is more and more talked about.
Russia warned of consequences if those two Nordic countries do join NATO. What can those consequences be, actually?
You see, this kind of warning against the NATO expansion actually came as early as Mikhail Gorbachev. So all the Russian leaders invariably warned against such expansion, but no Western leaders would take them seriously until this time. Yeah, so Putin actually has a reputation or a name for honoring what he said. Because I read Foreign Policy yesterday in an opinion written by Stephen Walt. He actually mentioned that. He studied history, and he found what Putin said and did, for example, in Crimea, in Georgian War. So his conclusion is that Putin most possibly would honor what he said. But of course, talking about the nuclear weapon, that is another thing. So what I can say is Russian leaders, again, have warned time and again, so we don't know what would happen. But I'm absolutely sure that this would not add to the security of these two countries or the Europe as a whole.